The hallway didn't stay silent for long. Melody stood there in her gold and cream dress, phone held loosely in one hand, like a piece of evidence she didn't yet know how to use, and watched Emma's face do the thing faces do when they realize an escape route doesn't exist. The flicker, the collapse, the resignation. Melody. How long? Melody's voice came out steadier than she felt, which she would later understand was its own small mercy. That shock, at least, had the decency to hold her together long enough to get the words out. How long? Emma's throat walked. 11 months.
The number landed exactly as badly as Melody had already braced for. And still, somehow, worse. 11 months meant before Melody had even told Emma his name over diner coffee. 11 months meant every conversation about him, every complaint, every giddy update, every single time Melody had said, "I think he's the one," to the one person in the world who already knew, with total certainty, that he wasn't. Not for her. Not honestly. Not ever. 11 months, Melody repeated, like saying it again might make it smaller. It didn't. So the whole time, the whole entire time, Emma, every time I sat across from you crying about him being distant, you knew. You knew exactly why. I didn't know how to. Don't. Melody held up a hand, and it was shaking. And she hated that it was shaking, because she didn't want him or Emma or anyone to get the satisfaction of watching her fall apart in real time. Don't tell me you didn't know how. You've known how to do everything else. You knew how to sit at my baby shower planning meeting and pick out a cake flavor, Emma. You knew how to let me spend $400 on balloons for a baby that isn't a surprise to you at all.
I was scared. I don't care. And the terrible thing was, Melody realized as she said it, that she meant it, that somewhere in the last 90 seconds, the part of her that had spent 6 years automatically caring about Emma's fear, Emma's excuses, Emma's side of things, had simply switched off, like a light in a room she no longer had any reason to enter. I don't care that you are scared. I was scared too. I was scared my whole relationship was falling apart, and I called you every single time to help me figure out why. And you sat there and helped me look for reasons when you were the reason. Emma didn't argue. There wasn't, Melody understood distantly, anything left to argue. I need to ask you something, and I need you to actually answer it, Melody said, and her voice had dropped now, quieter, worse than the shouting had been. Did you ever once feel bad? Or did you just feel bad about getting caught? The silence that followed answered the question, more honestly than anything Emma could have said.
She found Emeka 20 minutes later in the parking lot outside his own building, having called him 4 times in a row with a calm that frightened even her. He came down, still in his shirt from that morning, hair unstyled, face arranging itself into the practiced concern of a man who has been caught before and knows the opening moves. "Mel, baby, what's wrong? What happened?" "Don't." The word came out flat, final, the same word she'd used on Emeka, but with none of the same grief behind it. This one had teeth. "I know." Something in his face shifted, fast, recalculating. "Know what?" Emeka, the messages, 11 months, the doorway, the proposal being, what did you call it? Buying more time. She watched every one of those words land on him like small individual blows, watched him run in real time through his options, and understood with total clarity that he was not going to apologize so much as manage her.
It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like. Melody laughed, short and humorless, gold bangles chiming as she crossed her arms. You know what's actually funny? I used to tell people you were generous, handsome, that you treated me right. Another laugh, uglier this time. I told my best friend that. I told the woman you were sleeping with the whole time that I was happy someone finally treated me right. Melody, I do love you. You don't get to say that word to me anymore. Her voice cracked on it. Finally, the first real crack since the phone had lit up in her hand. You don't get to use it like it still means something, when I just found out it never did. Not for me.
He reached for her arm, and she stepped back so fast she nearly lost her footing on the curb. And something in that instinctive flinch, her own body protecting itself before her mind had even caught up, told her everything she needed to know about how thoroughly, how completely this man had already caused her. "I'm done," she said. "Don't call me. Don't come to my job. Don't send flowers. Don't send apologies. Don't send anything. If you try, I will make sure everyone who matters to you knows exactly what kind of man you are, starting with whoever you're planning on lying to next." She turned and walked away and did not look back and did not cry until she was 3 blocks over, sitting on a stranger's low garden wall, gold bangles pressed against her mouth to keep the sound in.
The calls started that same night. Emeka first, apologetic, then wounded, then by the 4th missed call, faintly threatening, in that specific way men get when accountability starts to feel like an inconvenience rather than a consequence. Emma's texts came separately, in careful, aching paragraphs that Melody read exactly once each before deleting, because reading them twice felt like giving Emma something she hadn't earned back. "I know I don't deserve to say this, but I love you and I'm so sorry. Please don't shut me out completely. You're the only real family I have. I think about it every day. I would give anything to undo it." Melody didn't respond to any of it. Not that week, not the next. She changed her number in the 3rd week, mostly for Emeka's benefit, though it caught Emma in the same net, and something about that felt, if not satisfying, at least clean. A single decisive cut instead of a slow, bleeding one.
Weeks folded into months, the way they do when you are simply trying to survive them rather than live them. Melody threw herself into work with the specific ferocity of someone using a job as a tourniquet. She stopped checking anyone's social media. She let her mother worry from a distance, answering just enough calls to prevent an actual welfare check, deflecting every "are you seeing anyone new?" with a practiced, breezy, "not yet, mommy, we breathe." She was, by month 4, almost convincing herself she was fine. Then, the invitation arrived. It came in a cream envelope with gold foil lettering, hand-delivered by a courier who had clearly been given no context whatsoever for the reaction he was about to cause. And Melody stood in her own doorway, holding it for a long moment before she even opened it, because some instinct, old, well-earned, already knew. "Emma and Emeka, request the honor of your presence." She read it twice. Then a 3rd time, the same ritual she'd performed months earlier with a different, equally devastating piece of information, and thought, with something that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sob, that the universe apparently had a very limited sense of humor and had decided to reuse the same joke twice.
They'd actually done it. He'd actually married her. After everything, the 11 months, the hallway, the lie she'd built her entire baby shower around, Emma had stood in a dress in front of people and said yes to the exact man who had spent nearly a year lying to both of them simultaneously. And some deeply confused member of a wedding planning committee, had decided Melody's name still belonged on the guest list, as though 4 months of silence and a shattered friendship were simply an oversight to be smoothed over with cream cardstock. Melody sat down on her own kitchen floor, invitation still in hand, and cried the way she had cried exactly once before, the ugly, gutted, doubled-over kind of crying that has nothing left to protect and nothing left to prove. It didn't matter that she didn't want him back. It didn't matter that she told him clearly in a parking lot that she was done. Grief, it turned out, doesn't check whether you still want the thing you're grieving. It just shows up uninvited in a cream envelope and makes you relive the worst day of your life as if no time had passed at all.
Her mother found her like that an hour later, having let herself in with the spare key, she still, against Melody's mild protests, insisted on keeping, and stood in the kitchen doorway, taking in the scene. Her daughter on the floor, invitation crumpled in one fist, mascara tracked halfway down her face. "Nay?" Her mother crouched down, gently pried the invitation loose, glanced at it, and her expression tightened into something that was equal parts fury and heartbreak on her daughter's behalf. "This is not for you to carry anymore. I know."
"Do you?" Her mother's voice was gentle, but unyielding, the tone of a woman who had raised this child and was not about to watch her disappear into a grief that had already been given 4 months too many. Because it has been 4 months, Melody. 4 months of you working, sleeping, and nothing else. No friends, no going out. You changed your number so this man could not find you, and still he finds a way to reach into your kitchen from a wedding invitation. What do you want me to do, Mommy? I want you to live. Her mother reached out and tilted Melody's chin up, the same gesture she'd used since Melody was small and skinned her knees on the playground. You are still young, you are still beautiful, you still have a whole life that man knows nothing about, and you are going to go live it, starting with getting off this floor and out of this house, because this house has his ghost in every corner, and I am tired of watching you live with a ghost.
Melody laughed, wet, unwilling, the first real laugh in what felt like a very long time. "You want me to move?" "I want you to move," her mother confirmed, entirely serious. Somewhere he does not know, somewhere Emma does not know, a fresh address for a fresh start. And then she added, standing and pulling Melody up by both hands, with the brisk efficiency of a woman who had decided the crying portion of the evening was officially over. "You are going to let your mother introduce you to your cousin Ifelma's colleague. He is an engineer, very respectful, not particularly funny, but you have had enough funny for one lifetime. Mommy, I am not asking. Get up, wash your face. We are ordering food, and tomorrow you are calling a real estate agent."
Melody, let herself be pulled up. Let herself be steered towards the bathroom. Let herself be mothered in the specific, unglamorous, essential way that only a mother who has watched you nearly disappear knows how to do. And somewhere in the middle of blowing her nose into a paper towel, while her mother loudly negotiated jollof rice prices over the phone in the next room, Melody felt something in her chest loosen, just slightly, for the first time in 4 months. She put the apartment up 2 weeks later. New city, new number already secured, no forwarding address given to anyone from her old life. Whatever came next, she decided, packing the last of her boxes into a rented van, while her mother supervised with the intensity of a woman overseeing a military operation. It was going to happen somewhere Emeka and Emma had never set foot, in a home neither of them would ever be able to picture her in. She did not send an RSVP.
The wedding photos were beautiful. Emma knew this because she'd looked at them exactly once, the week after, and then never again. Because looking at them meant looking at a version of herself, standing in white lace, 6 months pregnant, smiling the smile she'd perfected over the past year, the one that had gotten so convincing, even she sometimes forgot it wasn't real. Melody hadn't come. Emma had known she wouldn't, had sent the invitation anyway, out of some desperate, half-formed hope she couldn't fully explain even to herself. A hope that maybe, somehow, enough time and enough cream cardstock could paper over 11 months of lies. It hadn't. Of course it hadn't. She'd stood at the altar scanning the crowd once, quickly, foolishly, before catching herself, and had spent the rest of the ceremony trying not to think about the empty seat she'd reserved on the second row, front section, reserved for Bestfriend, still taped to the back of the chair because nobody on the planning committee had known to remove it.
That had been 5 months ago. The baby, a girl, exactly as Emma had guessed on instinct that night in the doorway, was 3 months old now. Sleeping in a nursery painted the soft cream and gold Emma had once, in an entirely different life, described to a bridal consultant as elegant, timeless, the kind of room a happy family grows into. The room was beautiful. The family grown into it was not.
Emeka came home at 9:40 that night, which was, by the current standard, early. Emma heard his key in the door from the kitchen, where she stood over a pot of stew she hadn't had the energy to actually taste while cooking, and felt the specific hollow lurch that had become her body's automatic response to the sound. Not relief, not warmth, just a kind of bracing, the way you'd brace for weather. "You're back early," she said, and hated how it came out. Not warm, not accusing, just flat, the tone of someone reading a weather report. Meeting ran late, then traffic. He didn't look at her when he said it, dropping his bag by the door, already loosening his tie, already pulling out his phone. "Is she asleep?" 2 hours ago.
Good. He said it, the way you'd say it about a task successfully completed by someone else, and disappeared toward the bedroom without asking what Emma had eaten, whether she'd slept, whether the day had been long, whether the baby had done the thing with her fist, curling around Emma's finger, that had made Emma cry a little, alone, at 2 p.m. on a random Tuesday, because there was no one left to tell about it. She used to tell Melody things like that. She sat down at the kitchen table with a bowl of stew she didn't eat, and listened to the low murmur of his voice through the bedroom wall. On the phone again, the same clipped, careful register he used for calls he didn't want overheard. The same one she'd stopped asking about months ago, because the asking had never once produced an answer that didn't feel like another brick in a wall she'd started quietly to understand she'd built herself.
She thought, not for the first time, about the parking lot conversation she'd never witnessed, but had pieced together anyway, in fragments, over months. Melody's voice on that last unanswered voicemail, Emma still hadn't deleted, shaking but resolute. "I don't care that you were scared. I was scared too." Emma had been so certain back then that surviving the wreckage with Emeka meant she'd chosen correctly, that whatever they'd broken to get here had at least been broken for something real. She understood now, sitting alone at a kitchen table with stew going cold and a baby monitor crackling faintly on the counter, that she had mistaken the scale of the damage for the value of the thing it had bought her. As if a fire big enough must have been worth starting. As if the size of what you burnt down said anything at all about what was left standing. Nothing was left standing. That was the part nobody warned you about.
It got worse in the small ways first, the ways that were almost too small to name, which was, Emma understood, exactly the point. He stopped asking how her day was. Then he stopped pretending to listen when she answered anyway. He started taking calls on the balcony as a matter of routine rather than exception, and Emma stopped asking who, because the answers had long since stopped being answers at all. Just variations on work, delivered with the specific, practiced blankness of a man who knew she no longer had the energy to push. She found herself some nights standing in the nursery doorway, watching her daughter sleep, and thinking about a different doorway, the one from 11 months into a relationship that hadn't officially begun yet, the one where a man she'd later marry had looked over her best friend's shoulder and said, "I missed you," with his eyes locked on Emma's face. She used to think of that moment as the beginning of something. She understood now that it had simply been the first demonstration of a pattern she'd chosen over and over not to see.
He does this, she thought, standing in the dark nursery, one hand resting on the crib rail. He did it to Melody. He is doing it to me. There is probably a third woman somewhere, right now, hearing the exact same phone on the balcony silence I'm hearing, wondering if she's imagining it. The thought made her sick, in a way that had nothing to do with the baby weight she hadn't quite lost yet. The fights, when they finally started, were quiet. No shouting, no thrown objects, just two people occupying the same rooms with an increasing exhausted distance, like tenants who'd stopped pretending to be roommates. "You're never here," Emma said one night, Not as an accusation, so much as an observation, the way you'd note that it had started raining. I'm building something for us, for her. He didn't look up from his phone. You don't understand what it takes.
I understand exactly what it takes, Emma said. And something in her voice must have carried more than she meant it to, because he finally looked up. I understand it better than anyone, Emeka. I watched you build the exact same thing for Melody, right up until you didn't. His jaw tightened. That's not fair, isn't it? Emma laughed, short and humorless. An echo of a laugh she'd heard once, secondhand, described to her by no one, imagined entirely from the sound of her own voice cracking on a similar night a lifetime ago. You proposed to her on a rooftop while telling me it didn't change anything between us. You want to explain to me what part of that history should make me feel secure right now? That was different. How? He didn't have an answer. He never had an answer. Not really. Just variations of that was different and you're overreacting. And on the worst nights, silence, which was somehow worse than either, because silence didn't even pretend to be trying. Emma went to bed alone that night, as she had most nights for months, and lay staring at the ceiling with her hand resting on her own chest, feeling the specific ache of a woman who had won a war she now understood she'd never wanted to fight, and had lost in the winning absolutely everything that had made the victory worth wanting. She thought about Melody more than she let herself admit, not with guilt exactly, though there was plenty of that too, but with something closer to grief, the specific grief of losing a person while they were still alive somewhere in the world, laughing at things Emma would never hear about, building a life with a shape Emma would never get to see. She wondered some nights if Melody had found someone, if Melody was happy, if Melody ever thought about the friendship the way Emma thought about it, as something enormous and irreplaceable that she'd burned down for a man who, it was becoming devastatingly clear, had never been worth the ash.
She did not reach out. She told herself it was because Melody deserved peace, not another intrusion from the two people who'd cost her the most peace she'd ever have to give up. The truer answer, the one Emma could only admit to herself at 2 a.m., with a baby monitor crackling, and a husband asleep 3 feet away, like a stranger sharing her bed, was that she was afraid. Afraid that reaching out would only confirm what she already suspected, which was that Melody had built something whole and good out of the wreckage, while Emma sat inside the very thing she'd wrecked it for, watching it slowly, methodically, come apart in her hands.
2 years is long enough to become a stranger to your own old life, if you let it. Melody had let it, deliberately, methodically, the way you let a wound close over, not forgetting exactly, but no longer checking it every day to see if it still hurt. She lived across the city now, in a small house with a garden she'd actually managed to keep alive, 3 streets from the running club where she'd met Toby, the engineer, not particularly funny as advertised, but steady in a way that had taken Melody nearly a year to trust, and had turned out eventually to be worth every cautious month of getting there. He made her laugh in a quieter register than she was used to. He'd never once made her feel like she was competing for his attention with someone else's shadow. When he'd proposed, small, at home, no rooftop, no strangers crying at nearby tables, just the two of them, and a ring he'd nervously kept in his coat pocket for 3 weeks before working up the nerve, Melody had said yes without a single flicker of the old fear, and had understood in that moment that healing wasn't the absence of scars. It was simply no longer flinching when someone touched them.
She was 6 weeks from her own wedding, humming under her breath in the frozen aisle of a grocery store on an unremarkable Thursday evening, comparing 2 brands of ice cream with the mild, luxurious boredom of a woman whose biggest current crisis was mint chip versus cookies and cream, when she heard a voice she hadn't heard in 2 years. Melody? She turned, and time did the strange thing it does when it collapses all at once. Because there, 3 feet away, in the middle aisle of a grocery store, neither of them had any business being in on the same night, stood Emma. She looked different. Thinner in a way that didn't read as healthy so much as worn down, dark circles carefully but not entirely concealed. A toddler balanced on her hip, who had Emeka's exact stubborn chin and Emma's same watchful eyes. Her burgundy wig had been replaced with her natural hair, cropped shorter than Melody had ever seen it. And there was something in the set of her shoulders, a permanent low-grade bracing that Melody recognized immediately, because she'd worn that exact posture herself once for the better part of a year.
Emma! Neither of them moved for a moment. The freezer hummed. Somewhere down the aisle, a child was arguing with a parent about a specific brand of cereal, entirely oblivious to the 2 women standing frozen amid the ice cream, holding 2 years of silence between them like something breakable. "You look," Emma started and stopped, visibly recalibrating. "You look really good." "Thank you." Melody didn't offer the compliment back, not out of cruelty, but because it would have been a lie, and she'd promised herself somewhere in the last 2 years that she was done managing other people's comfort at the expense of her own honesty. The toddler on Emma's hip reached for a box of popsicles and missed, and Emma shifted her automatically, absently, the practiced motion of a mother running on fumes. "I heard you are getting married," Emma said. Her voice had gone careful. The way you'd handle something you weren't sure was still allowed to touch. "If your mom mentioned it, I hope that's okay, that I know. I wasn't..." She stopped again, visibly steadying herself. "I'm happy for you, genuinely." "Thank you," Melody said again, and this time meant it, though it came out smaller than she intended. There was a silence that stretched long enough to become its own kind of statement. Melody watched something move behind Emma's eyes. Not quite tears, but close. The specific effort of a woman holding a great deal back because a grocery store aisle was not the place to let it out. "How are you?" Melody asked finally, and hated a little that some old reflexive part of her still cared about the answer.
Emma let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. Honestly, she looked down at her daughter, adjusted the strap of the diaper bag slipping off her shoulder, and when she looked back up, something in her had cracked open just slightly, just enough. "Not great. It's not what I thought it would be. It's not what I give up everything for." Her voice wavered on the last part. "I think about it a lot, actually, what I gave up. I don't know why I'm telling you that. You don't owe me the space to say it." "No," Melody agreed, not unkindly. "I don't." Emma nodded, accepting it, blinking fast. I want you to know I think about it. Not in a way that asks anything of you. I just needed you to know that I know exactly what I threw away, and it wasn't worth it. And I don't think there's ever going to be a day I stop understanding that."
Melody stood there for a long moment, ice cream forgotten in her hand, and felt the old ache flare. Not the sharp, gutting kind from the hallway 2 years ago, but a duller, more distant thing now, like a scar that remembers the weather before you do. "I'm not going to pretend it didn't wreck me," Melody said finally. "It did, for a long time, longer than I want to admit to you, standing here holding ice cream. A small, unwilling, almost smile. But I'm not that person anymore. I built something good out of what was left. And I don't think I could have built it if I'd kept holding on to what happened, or onto you, or onto him." She glanced, briefly, at the little girl on Emma's hip. Not with resentment, she realized, somewhat to her own surprise. Just a quiet, complicated tenderness for a child who hadn't asked for any of the mess she'd been born into. "She's beautiful, by the way." Emma's eyes filled properly then. "Thank you."
"I hope it gets better for you," Melody said, and meant that too. In the specific, distant way you can mean well for someone you no longer have any stake in. "I really do, but I can't be the person you say this to, Emma. Not because I'm still angry. I'm not, really, not anymore.
Just because that person, the one who used to hear things like this from you, she's not around anymore. I let her go a long time ago, so I could become this one. Emma nodded, wiping quickly at her eyes with the back of her free hand, careful not to disturb her daughter. That's fair, she said quietly. That's more than fair. Take care of yourself, Melody said, and meant it as the ending it was. Not cold, not warm, simply complete. A door closed gently rather than slammed. And her. You too. Emma's voice cracked on it. Congratulations. On the wedding. I mean that.
Melody nodded once, put the cookies and cream in her cart. She decided, somewhere in the last 10 minutes, without quite noticing herself decided, and walked toward the checkout without looking back. The way she'd learned to do a long time ago, in a different life, walking away from a different parking lot. Behind her, Emma stood alone in the frozen aisle for a moment longer, daughter on her hip, watching the space where her old best friend had been, and understood, with the particular clarity that only arrives after it's much too late to use it, that some doors, once you close them yourself, do not open again, no matter how much regret you press against them. She put the popsicles in her cart, because her daughter was still reaching for them, and went home to a house that would still be quiet when she got there, in all the ways that mattered.